What is up, everybody? We are dusting off coast to coast. We are back for 2024 NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network. My name is Chris Wilner, MRN pit reporter, MRN announcer Kyle Rickey out at Stafford in Connecticut. Kyle, we're back. It's been a couple months. We've had some time away from racing, although it seemed like the offseason gets shorter and shorter when you have, Chili Bowl and Shootout, and of course, all the action coming up here with Speed Weeks this week. But we're back. Year 3 of you and I together. Are you excited?
I am. I feel like we just did our last show of year 2,
Yeah.
but I also feel like I've seen you almost every day since then because you've been nonstop. I've tuned into your coverage of the Chili Bowl Midget Nationals and the Tulsa Shootout, and you've been. I think you're at the Rolex 24. I mean, a lot going on, and a lot of those miles already racked up for you in the first month of the year.
That is true. That is very true. There's no rest for the wicked, that's for sure. But I'm excited. 2024 has already gotten off to a great start. When you look at how last year ended on the NASCAR regional schedule of things, you've got a great start to the World Series of Asphalt that we'll get to out at New Smyrna, the kickoff Speed Weeks. There's a lot of hype going in across all the major series, so I'm excited to see where the storylines come as we get into 2024. K-Rick, what'd you do this offseason? Anything exciting?
No, not nearly the exciting offseason you had. I rested, I relaxed.
Good.
I feel like the older I get, the more that I like to do. But we'll be ready to go here for a full season of racing up here in New England and around the country with the Motor Racing Network.
Absolutely. As the weather starts to get warmer around the country, we've got a great show for you here on this first episode of 2024. Of course, we are talking about Speed Weeks, everything going down in Florida between New Smyrna and, of course, the World Center of Racing at Daytona International Speedway. We'll preview the ARCA Menard Series as they get set to go. We already had the opener for the Wheel and Modified Tour earlier this week, so we'll talk about that. And, of course, have the managing director for NASCAR in their weekly and touring series, Joey Dennowitz, join us to talk all things rebranding, yes, because it's NASCAR Regional now, beginning in 2024 and beyond. So we'll talk about what that means for short track racing and more coming up. Well, Kyle, let's get things started with the action out at New Smyrna Speedway and the World Series of Asphalt. It is one of the highlights of the early part of the year because everyone gets to dust off their race cars, and it's 9 nights of racing. So if you cannot get your fill in 9 nights, then something's wrong with you, because we've already had incredible racing as this one goes through Saturday the 17th. And we'll start it off, Kyle, with a couple of nights ago, Ron Silk picking up the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour season opener, much like he did a year ago en route to a championship. It was a thriller, Kyle, with a stout lineup of race cars down there at New Smyrna.
Yeah, it was a great race. Over 30 cars took the green flag. I believe 35 were on the starting grid. Nearly 40 were entered, but a couple of cars had issues in practice and qualifying earlier in the day. A huge crowd for the second year in a row. It wasn't an official sellout. It was pretty darn close. Not a seat to be had at the New Smyrna Speedway on Saturday night. And like you mentioned, they saw a great battle between Ron Silk, picking up right where he left off from 2023. Heated battle with Justin Bonsignor in lap traffic late in the event. Austin Beers, great run up in front of the field most of the night. Couple of notables that were not. Matt Hirschman, I think everybody expected him to challenge for the race win, but he did not, finishing just out of the top 5, I believe. And Ryan Preece, kind of embarrassed. He said last night after he won, and we'll get to that in a moment, but he said that he was kind of embarrassed on Saturday. He just remembered the last time he went a lap down in a NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour race, but he did on Saturday. That's how tough the field was on Saturday night that saw Ron Silk pick up that initial win of the season.
And he's had a good start to Speed Weeks down there at the World Series of Asphalt. Also picked up the Monday Tour Type Modified victory over Ryan Preece, another good battle. So if you're Ron Silk, you always talk about race car drivers love momentum, and what better way to do it coming off a championship season than going 2 for 3 to start the World Series of Asphalt. You mentioned Ryan Preece picking up the win as we record this episode Wednesday, picked it up Tuesday night. Good to see him get back on the horse. I know he loves running that modified down there at New Smyrna Speedway, but what's your takeaway so far from the modified slate of things down there at New Smyrna?
It's a great field of cars, like we've seen every year, I feel like, in the last 6 or 7 years. I mean, there was a time period where they were only getting 12 to 15 cars, and suddenly with the help of streaming a few years ago, those car counts went up, and a lot of teams have committed to run the full now 6 nights, with the tour race on Saturday and then the 5 nights culminating with the Richie Evans 100 on Friday night. A lot of young stars just looking to get their feet wet in modified racing. And then you got the veterans like Ryan Preece and Ron Silk that have been running well up the front of the field. I think Silky was one caution away last night from a three in a row, coming from the 8th starting spot, made his way up to second, and just couldn't quite reel in Ryan Preece there in the closing laps. But overall, fantastic racing thus far. Haven't seen a lot of torn up race cars, and 3 more big nights to come.
Of course, you also have down there local divisions as well, 602 crate modifieds, and of course, late models and super late models have been in action for a few nights so far at the World Series of Asphalt. When you look at some of the, aside from the ASA Stars National Race, which was last night, we'll get that to that in a minute, but Gio Ruggiero winning the first night. Gus Dean had probably the most emotional win of the week, just a week after losing his grandfather who had never missed a race, goes out there and finally gets one done in the super late out at New Smyrna. Some names that I maybe didn't expect to get right off the bat, some checkered flags, got a few big wins there to start the week.
I love Gus Dean, and I always have. I've known him for several years now, and his involvement in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, obviously running the super late model the last several seasons down at the New Smyrna Speedway, picking up that checkered flag. Very emotional, probably the most emotional victory lane that we have seen thus far, and probably will see all week. Gio Ruggiero, one of the young stars that we've talked about in the past, has made a name for himself, not only on the local level up here in New England, but on the national level as well in a super late model, and took the first big checkered flag of the year, and I expect to find him or see him find more success as the week and the season obviously unfolds. Just getting ramped up.
And then, of course, we had the second year beginning with the ASA Stars National Tour, the National Touring Super Late Model Series under the ASA banner, and a lot of hype going into this one, Kyle. Of course, we talk about the star-studded field that always shows up for these races when you've got Ty Majeski, Bubba Pollard, Stephen Nasse, and the like. Little bit of a long race last night, and it wasn't without some drama as we had that big pass for the win. Bubba Pollard getting around Ty Majeski with about 20 laps to go. And Jet Nolan came out of nowhere and finished second with a career best finish for him. So a lot of new names coming up toward the front, but no one's surprised to see Bubba Pollard get a win down there at New Smyrna.
No, especially after he made the pass. For a while, it looked like it was going to be Ty Majeski that was going to pick up the win early in that event. Couple of long green flag runs saw him pull away, but you mentioned the late pass for the race win that saw Bubba Pollard pull away about the length of the front straightaway at the checkered flag. So they did some wrenching on that car during the event, a couple of stage breaks to allow the opportunity for these teams to work on their cars. And they hit the right setup in the closing stage of the event and able to take the win. I feel bad for Derek Griffith, involved in a huge incident over in turn number 1. He said in his post-race interview, his super late model season may be done. Hopefully that was just the heat of the moment emotion comment, but we'll see. They're very expensive race cars. And like he said, there was really no need to tear up a $100,000 race car the way that they did on the front stretch last night. So hopefully Derek can get back on track here sooner rather than later.
That's right, and we also had Casey Roderick round out the podium in the 3rd position. Chase Elliott was a part of that race as well, Cole Butcher and the like. So the 2024 ASA Star National Tour Series underway after the opening race there in the Clyde Hart Memorial on Tuesday night, and there's still plenty of racing to come. Kyle, you mentioned the Richie Evans Memorial 100 on Friday for the modifieds. We also have the Orange Blossom 100 that caps the World Series of Asphalt on Saturday. Still lots of racing to go, and you can watch it all on Flow Racing. I know that's where you've been tuned in all week long.
All week long and all off season long. So much going on. And kudos to the race fans down in Florida. We talked a lot about New Smyrna, the great crowds last night for the ASA, the Stars ASA race, Saturday night for the modifieds. But Volusia Speedway Park had their largest crowd ever on Saturday night for the World of Outlaws in their 4th and final night. East Bay Raceway in their final season have had huge crowds already this season in just the last couple of nights. I know but the All-Stars were there, or the High Limits were there the last couple nights. So great crowds packing these short tracks before a lot of them venture over to the big track here beginning Thursday night.
Yeah, it's one of the most exciting couple of weeks in racing because you can just call Florida home for a couple weeks and spent, half of it at New Smyrna or Volusia or East Bay, and then head right up the road and go to Daytona International Speedway beginning really tonight with
Yep.
qualifying as we record this on Wednesday, but of course the duels on Thursday and then through the rest of the week. So lots coming up. World Series of Asphalt, again, you can catch all the action the rest of the week on Flow Racing. We did have a race before we got all of this kick started out in South Carolina at Florence. It was the Icebreaker, where we had Carson Kvapil do Carson Kvapil things for Junior Motorsports and pick up an early season win. But his boss, Dale Jr., was in the field, drove from like 13th to a top 5, Kyle. That was probably, and he even said it was probably some of the most fun he's had in a late model in a long time.
Finished in the 4th spot. Said it was the first time in, I think, 17 years, maybe longer than that, maybe 27 years. Time flies, that he has had to go through tech at Florence Speedway there in South Carolina, a track that he raced at a lot growing up and kind of, getting his start in this sport. So finished 4th, a great run. Connor Hall, another good run, finished in the 2nd spot to Kvapil, who again, like Ronnie Silk in the Modifieds, kind of picked up right where he left off a year ago.
Absolutely. And then before we get to our guests coming up this week, don't forget, we also were off during the Snowball Derby, so I'd be remiss to not talk about Ty Majeski getting that 2nd Snowball Derby championship in 4 years, getting it done after a lot of drama-filled action on the racetrack, beginning with lap 1 that tore up, half the field, including Derek Thorne, William Byron was involved, Eric Jones, and then the controversial race for the lead inside 20 to go between Bubba Pollard and Stephen Nasse. Both those cars ended up in the wall. Kyle, could you point the finger to anything, or was that just a late race battle for the lead and just kind of a racing deal? Because certainly that was, I didn't expect to see that. And of course, Ty Majeski just said thank you very much as he cruised to the win.
That was just a late race. Hey, we're battling for the win in the Snowball Derby, one of the most prestigious short track events in this country. They came together, seas parted, like you mentioned, for Ty, who passed them both to go on to claim the win. You got to feel for a lot of those drivers involved in that first lap wreck. I mean, so much build up to that race. You're there for the better part of 3 days, practicing and qualifying, and the last chance race the night before. A lot of laps, a lot of money invested into that event, and to not even make turn 1, tough for a lot of those big teams that you expected to run toward the front of the field during those 300 laps.
And of course, all this is under the now newly branded NASCAR Regional Division. That announcement came a couple of weeks ago before we got everything started down in Florida. And Kyle, a big moment for the touring series, the weekly series, to now be under this umbrella. The name changed. Nothing else really has yet. But at the same time, it makes things a little bit more concise for people to realize that all of, whether you're talking about the ARCA Menard series, East and West, the Wheel and Modified Tour, or of course our weekly series with the late models, it all follows under the NASCAR regional banner. I think makes it a lot easier for race fans to follow the ladder system in on the march to NASCAR.
Yeah, it's a brand that we've seen evolve quite a bit over the last decade with NASCAR home tracks for a long time, NASCAR roots in recent years, now NASCAR regional. And we'll talk to Joey here in a little bit, Joey Dennowitz, who is behind the rebranding. It's kind of like going back a couple of decades when it wasn't branded, but we just in the media referred to them as NASCAR's regional series back, when the West Series was a NASCAR branded property, the NASCAR Winston West at the time, the NASCAR North Tour up here in the Northeast, the Wheel and Modified Tour. There were a few other tours part of that, regional series. And, bringing that name back, no doubt it's going to grow the brand and grow hopefully those series into stepping stones, as they have done for so many decades, into NASCAR's national series.
It was a big announcement, and of course, we're excited to see where this goes moving forward. And the guy behind it, as Kyle mentioned, Joey Dennowitz, is standing by on the other side of the break. So we'll step aside real quick and welcome Managing Director for NASCAR and the touring and weekly series, Joey Dennowitz, to the show here on NASCAR Coast to Coast after this.
For 3 decades, Racing Electronics has been the #1 choice for scanners, headsets, and all race day communications needs. Racing Electronics provides the ultimate fan experience for the ultimate NASCAR fan. Hear uncensored communication from every team in the race with a scanner from Racing Electronics, or tune into the MRN radio broadcast. To learn more, visit racingelectronics.com today. Be race ready, be RE equipped.
Welcome back into NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network. As promised, joining us, Mr. Joey Dennowitz, the NASCAR Managing Director for Weekly and Touring Series. Joey, it has been, and we just talked about it off air, kind of a hectic start, right? You know, you got the season going for all of our regional series and the new branding with NASCAR Regional. What have the last couple of weeks been like as we get some of our series getting going here in Speed Weeks?
It's been exciting, more than anything, just to finally see all of the work kind of come together and see things like the new branding with NASCAR Regional launch, see race cars on racetracks again. I think that's why we all kind of do this to some level. So through the off season, it's very important to get rest and recharged and give you some opportunity to work on some programs and things. But nothing is better than watching the Whelen Modified Tour take the green flag at New Smyrna last Friday.
35 cars strong last weekend at New Smyrna Speedway. Part of just one division at New Smyrna Speedway this week with a whole lot of cars. I believe there's 40 super late models, over 40 pro late models, a bunch of the local modifieds, 602 modifieds. What's the week like for you? How much time are you able to spend over at New Smyrna during their 9-night extravaganza kickoff to the season?
Well, a fair amount, whether it was the ASA Stars Tour last night or the Modified Tour or the kickoff last Friday. I've tried to get over there 3 or 4 times, but splitting time is difficult because there's a lot of things that are going on at the big track with our partners at Advanced Auto Parts or Whelen Engineering. And then, of course, you have the ARCA Menards series race on Saturday. So I'm really relishing this job opportunity because I get to spend time at the big track and the world center of racing, and they give me a credential to watch the Daytona 500 that I don't have to spend money on. But man, it is a lot of fun to sit in the grandstands at New Smyrna, sit off in turn 3 and 4 with the way I used to, you know, when I bought my pit pass, and watch great racing from there as well. You nailed it. Car counts are looking fantastic. I think the competition is as good as it's probably ever been. And you're starting with the advent of this technology, you're starting to be able to see these personalities come through a little bit more, and we're getting able to share that. And I think we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg on that. So the week is crazy, but it is a lot of fun to sit here in the office all day and then know that I'm going to end up at a racetrack at some point.
It certainly is exciting, and I know one of the big exciting, opportunities and kind of moments in this offseason was the rebranding to NASCAR Regional. Why now? I guess what was the messaging behind changing from roots to regional, and kind of what is the goal for that rebranding, kind of the umbrella for our series, whether it's ARCA Menards or Whelen Modified Tour or even the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series?
Great question. Thanks for asking that, because when I first got here, they said, congratulations, we want you to be a part of this. Your first job is to figure out what your title is. And not the managing director part, but the weekly and touring part. And I think over the last 10 to 15 years, whether it was weekly and touring, or it was roots, or it was grassroots, or home tracks, or there was a little bit of a confusion on this aggregation of assets that we have here, from the Whelen Modified Tour, the ARCA Menards series, and then, of course, our weekly series as well. And when Ben Kennedy had this vision for what he wanted the ladder system to start looking like, weekly and touring was a bit confusing. My litmus test was when I took this job and I went to my family, who has been in racing, my whole life, and said, "Oh, okay, I'm managing director of weekly and touring." They're like, "What is that?" Weekly doesn't it all happen weekly? Doesn't it mostly tour? And so thinking about getting new audience and getting new partnerships, we thought that it was probably a lot easier over a long period of time. We interviewed more than 30 people in all different promoters, racers, at all different levels, sponsors, partners, stakeholders like Flow Racing, our wonderful broadcast partner. And ultimately, I think regional kind of sums it up in a vernacular that's a little easier to understand to the layman. So again, whether we're looking at it as a broadcast package or whether looking at it as a partnership package, if I say, oh, this is the NASCAR regional assets, we're a little bit closer to understanding what that is rather than the weekly and touring side. This is a very important piece of the NASCAR ecosystem. And like I said, when I took this job, hearing that from Ben, Steve O'Donnell, Steve Phelps, and Mr. France and Mr. Helton, it kind of invigorated me, and I got me pretty excited for this opportunity. So to see an opportunity to change the name of it, and make it a little easier to understand, and also give us room to grow that, so that the ladder system can become a little bit more concise and clear, is the overall goal for it. So if we can make it a little bit easier for people to understand, we might be able to knock down some barriers of entry and get more people involved.
And I feel it takes us back a couple of decades. While it wasn't officially branded that, we always referred to them as the NASCAR Regional Series. Back when Winston West was that series, now the ARCA Menards West, the NASCAR North Series, now ARCA East. I guess the wording's kind of the same, but the official brand kind of stamped on as NASCAR Regional now going forward.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kyle, because again, it's easier to understand. You know exactly what I mean by that. We have the East Series, we have the West Series, which is probably as strong as it's ever been, perhaps. And if anybody has the opportunity to see a West race, I mean, it is very competitive through the season. And then the Whelen Modified Tour, primarily on the East Coast, the ARCA Menards Series, which is a Midwest staple, with a Midwest staple partner like Menards. So you nailed it. It's a lot. It's just clearer, easier, and overall, I think a lot better, so that we can kind of build into that as we grow the ladder system itself.
You talked about the ARCA Menards Series, East and West, and of course the Whelen Modified Tour, but the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series has been something, especially over the last couple of years, I think a lot of people have turned their attention to. The hype is becoming there. You look at these drivers like Lane Riggs, who go on, win the national title. He's getting ready to race the full-time series in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this year. Where's the emphasis on that kind of ladder system, that program in the late model ranks for you guys going into this year and moving forward?
Well, the NASCAR late model stock through the Southeast has become the standard in late models in the South. And if you're kind of paying attention to what's happening in the West, there's more and more emphasis on economical racing, which is what that platform was built and designed for. So I would imagine over the next couple of years, we will be there will be more adoption to a car like that, just again because of the economical way to go racing. You're seeing it with even our cars, the not our cars tour, but the cars tour, that put a whole tour together using that car, and what Jack's been able to do, and then giving it off to Dale and Justin Marks and that group. I mean, that's incredible to see the momentum that they have around that racing. So the weekly series champion is always so interesting. You're racing everyone on paper. Connor Hall told me he had like 16 spreadsheets going, trying to figure out points from all the different areas, which I think is an opportunity for us to add a little bit more drama and excitement to it. But to see folks make their mark there, that's the first time that the general public kind of sees that. And at NASCAR, we're able to put that up on a platform and shine a light on it. And then those guys get opportunities in the national series is exactly what that whole thing is for.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the ARCA Menards Series for a second. They open up this Saturday at Daytona International Speedway. 50 entries right now, one of the largest entry lists, if not the largest, in about a decade or so. Why do you think the sudden surge and the interest going into this season for the ARCA Menards Series?
Kyle, there's probably a lot of factors to that, but I think one of the best ones is that ARCA has always been that jumping off point to get to the national series. And looking at that entry list, like you said, 50 cars, it looks like a Rolex 24 entry list, right? Whether it's IndyCar stars, V8 supercar Australian stars. I mean, you're seeing all kinds of modified champion, which is a program thought of by Ron Dreger and promoted as the Road to Daytona to give up and coming NASCAR regional stars an opportunity to go test at Daytona, get approved, and if they like it and they want to do it and they can put some programs together, then you have an opportunity to take advantage of it and now start in the ARCA race at Daytona. And seeing the smile on Justin Bonsignore's face, just even talking about it is fun to watch. So, yeah, I mean, we're really looking forward to the ARCA race because of that. The more diversity that you can bring into that, the more eyeballs you can show how great ARCA racing really is.
You talked about how just this whole umbrella of NASCAR Regional is really that kind of ladder system to get to the national stage and under the NASCAR whole organization. But for you guys in this umbrella of series, whether it's ARCA, whether it's Whelen Modified Tour, or even the weekly series, how much of an emphasis too will it be on training some of these young up and coming stars to get to that next level, not just on the racetrack, but when it comes to media, you've got partners like Flow Racing now that can show us every single race across these series. So, how much of an emphasis do you put now on the drivers too, to kind of get them trained up and ready to take that next step when that time comes?
Yeah, I've been here 10 or 11 months, and one of the most gratifying moments or positions I've been in is to listen to hauler discussions with Mr. Ron Drager. And post race, things get heated and hot, and he is quick to remind everyone that our job at the series is not just to prepare these race car drivers on the racetrack. It's also off the racetrack, and that includes a lot of the intangibles, like how to carry yourself, how to behave, and how to represent not only your sponsors and yourself, but also the series and the overall sport of NASCAR racing. So it's been really gratifying to see that, and he takes that very seriously. That job, that duty, that responsibility to get these drivers prepared to go to the next level. Because when they get to the next level, if they do some bonehead move, they're always going to be, well, should have handled that in ARCA. So he takes that responsibility very seriously, and I've been, like I said, grateful that he's let me into those conversations so that I can learn how important that is and help those guys as well.
My final question for you, and we'll kind of wrap where we started with the modified, some new, I guess, some old new policies put back into play for the modifieds this year. The redraw is back, especially at some of these smaller racetracks up here in northern New England later this summer. What was kind of the emphasis about inverting some of the field for the start of these races?
Well, I think NASCAR's main objective is to put on a fair event, but also put on an entertaining event. And without the entertainment, no one's going to show up. And if no one shows up, then we don't have anything to race for. And unfortunately, we can't put together a show. So as you've seen in all of the other series and most other sports and entertainment properties, always tweaking things and adjusting things to see kind of what would make a better show out of it. And I think when Jimmy brought me, series director Jimmy Wilson brought me the idea for the redraw, I thought, man, that's an aggressive move. But man, I can't wait to see Ron Silk, Justin Bonsignore, Doug Coby, Austin Beers rush from 8th on the grid, up through the field. So the inner race fan kind of took over in that regard and helped make that decision. And when we talked to teams about it, a lot of them were in support of it due to that same opportunity. Okay, well, we're going to put on a show. It's going to be fun, and there's some history to it, like you said, Kyle. And I'm excited to kind of see it all come to fruition. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. But I'm excited to see it.
I know, and as a race fan, I'm excited to see it all play out as well. Like you mentioned, seeing those guys come from mid-pack. Joey, before we let you go, obviously we talked about this being a monumental task and this whole rebranding, and of course we're getting all of our series underway here in the next couple of weeks. But looking forward, maybe 2-3 years down the road, where do you see NASCAR Regional maybe expanding a little bit, maybe getting bigger? Do we look at some dirt opportunities, or is that kind of way too far down the road?
In my opinion, and I know that they pay me, but even before I took this job, in my opinion, NASCAR is an incredible brand that has an incredible brand equity and moves the needle when talking to people. Through my other sports and entertainment opportunities, saying NASCAR, they were very, very interested. I was at a English Premier League game a year ago in January, and they asked way more questions about NASCAR than I could get off about the EPL. So using that brand and using that platform to showcase local and regional racing is probably the next step for us. And what I think we have the opportunity to do is clearly and concisely explain the ladder system over the next few years and build out the ladder system. What are the steps to become a NASCAR Cup Series driver? And that is the ultimate goal, is a clear, concise answer to how does my daughter or son become a NASCAR Cup Series driver. Those are the next couple of years. Those are the next pieces that we need to put in place so that it's a lot easier to answer that question.
Well, it's going to be so exciting to see where this goes moving forward, but obviously off to a great start with a great Wheel and Modified Tour opener. Earlier this week at New Smyrna, of course, we've got ARCA Menard Series kicking off this week at the World Center of Racing. Joey, enjoy it. Enjoy Daytona, and we'll hopefully catch up with you here later on this season.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Joey Dennowitz, Managing Director for Weekly and Touring Series at NASCAR, joining us here as we kick off 2024. Coming up next, we'll preview more of the ARCA Menard Series opener at Daytona and their 2024 season. That's all next year on NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network.
For 3 decades, Racing Electronics has been the #1 choice for scanners, headsets, and all race day communications needs. Racing Electronics provides the ultimate fan experience for the ultimate NASCAR fan. Hear uncensored communication from every team in the race with a scanner from Racing Electronics, or tune into the MRN radio broadcast. To learn more, visit racingelectronics.com today. Be race ready, be RE equipped.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network. Chris and Kyle back with you. Kyle, great visit with Joey. A hard-working individual right now as we get the NASCAR Regional Series underway. Of course, World Series of Asphalt, and of course, ARCA Menard Series coming up this weekend. Big takeaways from this conversation, I think, was just the excitement level and really the forward thinking of where we're going to go with this grassroots and ladder system under the NASCAR umbrella now for years to come. And there's opportunities to grow as well and maybe expand to some other series over the next couple of years.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's a lot of series out there to expand to, and we're going to talk about a lot of them here on this show on a weekly basis, like the ASA Stars Tour that kicked off their season at New Smyrna on Tuesday night. The Cars Tour, they've had a ton of announcements during this off season. They're going to kick things off in a couple of weeks as well. So a lot of room to expand, a new look, a new brand, but the same stepping stones that hopefully will be strengthened here in 2024 because of this new branding and for some of these drivers to move up the ladder.
Cannot wait to see what happens moving forward. And of course, during that interview, you heard Joey and Kyle mention 50 entries for the ARCA Menard Series opener at Daytona, the 200-miler. And Kyle, I tell you what, nothing excited me more, not even the entry list coming out. It was the test in December and January for the ARCA Menard Series that we saw 60, I think, close do the test, and some were just trying to get cleared to go run an ARCA race in the future. The excitement level around ARCA probably couldn't be higher at this point, and it shows now with 50 cars going for starting spots at Daytona this weekend. I mean, and it starts with not only the full-time drivers that are going to be going for a championship, but some new names that I didn't think were going to even be a part of this several months ago. Shane Van Gisbergen and Marco Andretti are headlining that list as well.
Yeah, you talk about supercar racers, you talk about and Chicago Street Race winner last year, you talk about open wheel veterans in Marco Andretti coming in, the NASCAR modified champion, like Joey mentioned a little bit ago. Justin Bonsignore is going to be part of the field. The list goes on and on and on. Tanner Gray going to drive for Joe Gibbs Racing. Amber Balkin, Tony Breidinger, the ladies of the bunch that are going to run full-time this year for the championship with Venturini, along with their teammate Chris Wright. So the field is stacked, a lot of great storylines, a lot of great personalities, and it all kicks off this Saturday at the World Center of Racing. And hopefully that momentum that this series has right now continues into the rest of the year. You know, when they visit the Midwest or the Midwest short tracks, or some of the other short tracks here on the East Coast, we get those car counts, maybe not 50, but we can get 25, 30, 35 cars on a regular basis for the ARCA national platform. That'd be great. And we're off to a good start.
Marco Andretti running for Cook, Bruce Cook and Cook Motorsports Technologies, of course, SVG running for Pinnacle. And the story with SVG too, Kyle, is of course he's announced with Trackhouse to run, with allegiance with Trackhouse to run the full Xfinity Series schedule this year. He has to run the Daytona ARCA race just to get himself cleared to go run the big tracks because he hasn't yet with the NASCAR National Series. So can you imagine being your first time at Daytona, running a ARCA Menard Series race immediately followed by the NASCAR Xfinity Series opener at Daytona? That is a heck of a welcome to NASCAR moment, besides the fact that he won the Chicago Street Race in his first start. But back to super speedway racing, it's got to be completely different for SVG coming up this week.
And it's going to be completely different when it comes to qualifying because ARCA qualifies in groups. So he wants to make sure he lands in the right group when it comes to group qualifying, learn about the draft. You're not going to get a lot of time, or he's not going to get a lot of time to learn about the draft in the brief practice session that they're going to have before those group qualifying sessions roll off on, I believe, Friday. So a lot of track time coming up for SGV, a lot of learning, and hopefully he has a very successful double header on Saturday afternoon.
So we talk about those names doing some partial schedules, some big names moving over into the ARCA Menard Series. Let's talk about the championship as we get set to kick off 2024. Obviously, one of my favorite parts about following the ARCA Menard Series is every year you have a bunch of graduates that move on to either the Craftsman Truck Series or, in Jesse Love's case, your defending champion, moving up to the Xfinity Series. That opens the door for a new champion this year. And Kyle, there are a lot of names that were flirting near the top of a lot of races last year that will have now a big opportunity to capture a championship. Who are some of the drivers you have your eyes on going into this year's championship run, full-time drivers? The first one that comes to mind for me is Andres Perez de Lara, who I don't think finished outside the top 10 all last year, maybe once, was in the top 5 several times, challenged Jesse Love at a few races, but now seemingly is one of the best in terms of favorites and odds to win a championship this year.
First time I saw Andres Perez, I believe, was his first race in the ARCA Series at the Bristol Motor Speedway a couple of years ago. He looked so comfortable in traffic. So much happens over the course of a 150 or 200 lap event in that half mile. And he did a great job of coming from the back of the pack toward the front to challenge for the lead. And as the first time that he really put himself on the radar, or a lot of people's radars, in this sport. He's had a full year of experience since, and now you mentioned with Jesse Love moving on, certainly going to open the door for him to find success. Keep an eye on him. Keep an eye on his teammate, LeVar Scott, who showed well last year. Chris Wright, talked about him a moment ago. I feel like he's been around a long time, a lot of years now in the ARCA Menard Series. He's also done some part-time schedules in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. He'll be strong with a team that has been a powerhouse in the ARCA Menard Series for decades in Venturini Motorsports. And I look for the ladies to do well as well. And Amber Balkin and Tony Breidinger both have committed full-time.
That's right. And you mentioned LeVar Scott finished 4th in the Daytona 200 last year in his first effort at Daytona, so has an opportunity with Rev Racing. But yes, Venturini again is going to be the team to stop, but it'll be which one of the drivers will find their way to the top of the championship. It all starts again coming up on Friday at Daytona for the ARCA Menard Series 200. Greg Van Alst, the defending winner, is in the field, Kyle, and nothing made me smile more last year than watching Greg do his Victory Lane interview. A guy from Indiana who's said, I'm not meant to do this. I wasn't supposed to be here, and now winning at Daytona, you see the emotion on his face. He's back to defend his title. I'd be curious, though, what Tanner Gray does in the Joe Gibbs racing car. Of course, Tanner Gray, we followed him the last couple of years, full-time in the Craftsman Truck Series for Tricon Garage, but coming down to ARCA, could he be kind of considered almost a sleeper favorite in this race?
He could be. You know, he's with a good team. I guess it's going to be a matter of drafting help in the late stages of the event and allowing him to put himself in position at the right time on lap number 80. He has experience in the trucks, so we'll see if that can carry over into the ARCA Menard Series race on Saturday. Of course, he'll be racing on Friday night as well, so a busy couple of days for Tanner.
That's right. All right. And then the other big news over the weekend before we let everyone go here on this week's episode, of course, Kevin Harvick Incorporated. We talked about the late model program that kind of was restarted last year. We saw a number of drivers, including Lane Riggs, run a couple of races. Rodney Childers was able to crew chief that effort. they're going to be back and committing to a full-time season, and they've got 2 cars, not 1. They've got 2, with Brent Cruz going to chase the late model stock championship in the Cars Tour, running that 60 entries. 62 car will be a rotation all-star car. Josh Berry slated to drive with Lane Riggs, Landon Lewis, William Sawalich, and more. And there's a driver we haven't talked a lot about either. William Sawalich in the power rankings for the short track racers is up there near the top. So could be a team to watch, Kyle, in terms of, but how cool is it to see that organization and Kevin Harvick's name behind a full-time late model stock effort coming up this year?
Yeah, I love what he's putting back into short track racing over the last several years. But now that he's a retired NASCAR Cup Series driver, can put a little bit more focus on it when he's not in the broadcast booth. We've seen his investment into the Cars Tour over the last year, and now bringing a team back that's going to compete, full time. Make that with 2 cars and some of the biggest names in short track racing, including former national champion Josh Berry. You mentioned Brent Cruz will go full time. So it's pretty cool to see what he has done. His heart is in short track racing. We've seen it at Kern County on the West Coast. We're seeing it here now on the East Coast as well.
Well, Kyle, we have our racing plates full coming up this week. And of course, the Motor Racing Network is your home for all things Daytona International Speedway. Again, beginning as you're watching this episode Thursday night, the Blue Green Vacation Duels from Daytona, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the airtime on the Motor Racing Network. We've got our A-plus crew down there ready to go. And of course, it all continues Friday, the Craftsman Truck Series season opener, Saturday, ARCA Menard Series, and of course, the NASCAR Xfinity Series, all leading up to the Daytona 500 on Sunday. So, Kyle, I cannot wait to see how this year starts. I was fortunate enough to be at the Clash, which was very interesting with Mother Nature shifting things around. But to get the regular season started at Daytona, there's nothing like it.
And hopefully we're not having to shift around this weekend as well. Hopefully
I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to say it.
Hopefully she cooperates, and things can change between now when we film this show on Wednesday and by the time Saturday and Sunday roll around. So we'll see. But yeah, a lot of racing down there. I can't wait to see how the Richie Evans 100 pans out on Friday night at New Smyrna Speedway. That race affected by rain a year ago and did not happen for the first time since the 80s. So hopefully they have a great night of racing there for the Tour Type Modifieds. 602 Modifieds, a brand new class to the World Series at New Smyrna this year. They have struggled the last couple nights and just getting laps in the books before their time. Their 30-minute time constraint ran out. So hopefully they can get events completed this week as well. A lot of racing. Can't wait to watch it all.
That's right. New Smyrna, Daytona, you're home this weekend. For Kyle Rickey and our producer, Pat Jaggers, my name is Chris Wilner. We're back. NASCAR Coast to Coast. Episode 1 is in the books. We'll see you next week, where we'll recap it all from the World Center of Racing. Have a good one.